Where is the country these days? Well, we know where it is. Former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, happens to know where it is, too. Ambassador, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on, as we've had you on several times before, and you've had a chance to watch the campaigning for the last year or so. What do you make of the Tea Party's influence in all of this, and will that carry over into 2012, do you think?
Well, I think the influence has been enormous, and it's, I think, reflected a real dissatisfaction for the direction of the Obama administration and motivated by a concern for the country to make sure that we don't move further in that direction. So today is a real test of that sentiment. But as you correctly point out, this is just one test. It's one election. It'll have a big influence on Congress and some of the state governorships and state legislatures. But the big issue is in the White House, and so the staying power of the Tea Party and its continued willingness to do the hard work that you have to do to affect elections is something I think everybody will be watching beginning tomorrow.
Well, we've got the more moderate faction, which I call the Rovers, after Karl Rove, the more moderate factions of the Republican Party. And I think they may have grossly miscalculated on this Tea Party thing. We'll see after all the dust settles, but it seems like to me that these folks are the ones that are out of touch, and I don't know whether they'll just have to get along with the folks that are going to be running the Republican Party, but it's not going to be them anymore, is it?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see when the candidates who have gotten the support of the Tea Party come to Washington, how they fit in and how they affect the direction of thinking in Congress. The tendency too often, and it's true for many, many Republicans, is they come to Washington and they want to fit in. They want to get invited to the cocktail parties, and they get used to being here in Washington. They forget, in a sense, where they came from. My very strong sense is that the Tea Party candidates know that this is a problem. They know what they're about to confront, and they're determined not to let that happen to them. So that's that's going to be an interesting mix when people get together, because I think that actually the strength of the Tea Party, the enthusiasm it brings, and the effect it can have in Washington could well be reflected not just in people who think of themselves as Tea Party candidates. It could have an impact on a lot of other people who don't want to face a Tea Party primary in 2012, or people who remember what their own roots were and why they ran for Congress to begin with. So I think that's true in both parties. I really think we're on the verge of a major shift in American political life. It happens every once in a while, not just in one election, but a real seismic shift. And again, all this is projection and speculation. But I think the strength of the Tea Party is not something people should underestimate.
So you think these Tea Party folks may have gotten their shots before they head to Washington so they don't get that Potomac fever, huh?
Well, exactly. And it is, look, it's hard to resist. There's a joke among conservatives that people get elected and they come to Washington and quote, grow in office, close quote. This is a phrase the Washington Post loves to use for Republicans who come in as conservatives from their home districts, but end up being quote-unquote moderates after a fairly short period of time.
Right.
It's a kind of adulation. It's hard to resist, but I think the Tea Party candidates are ready for it.
Well, I hope so. So we've got now, after this election is over, we see what damage is done. The Democrats start picking up the pieces. You probably heard as we were going on and getting ready to come to you. I believe that the Democrats are going to lurch to the left instead of trying to come back to the center. Because I think that the people who are in the center in the Democrat Party are probably going to bolt a lot of these folks and head the Republican Party. I can see the Heath Schulers of the world saying, look, this party no longer represents me. I need to get out of it and go with people I feel comfortable with.
Well, the Democratic Party has been moving steadily to the left for years and years, and in fact, one longtime Democratic Congressman, Henry Waxman of California, actually said a few months ago he welcomed the smaller Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives to get rid of all those blue dogs so they could be more uniform and more on the left. Well, I think he's going to get his wish, and a lot of people are going to have to make a decision whether they want to put up with that kind of philosophy or whether they're going to come to where their real constituents' real sentiments are. So that's one of the reasons this could be a very, very significant realigning election.
Oh, yeah, because when you whittle them down, Ambassador, you whittle them down to the leftists like Henry Waxman and Nancy Pelosi and these other people in the House, there are not that many of them, really, that are that far to the left. And we've seen poll after poll that the vast majority of the people are center-right in this country. And so they no longer, or they never did, I don't believe, represent even the Democrat Party, much less America. But for some, I don't know how they did it, they managed to take control. They managed to take power of not only the Democrat Party, but the entire country. So when the Democrats took over, because you had the Heath Schulers and the Gene Taylors of Mississippi and people like this that were elected and sent to Washington, D.C., but they don't have a voice. They don't have a seat at the table with these folks. How do you think that happened, that Pelosi and these folks took control of that party?
Well, steadily in the 2006 and 2008 elections, people drifted away from the Bush administration and the Republican Party. And I say this as an alumnus of the Bush administration. I think particularly on the domestic side, people were hard-pressed to see a difference between the way the administration was going in terms of spending, government programs, and what the Democrats would do. And as you said, America is a center-right nation. I think a lot of people said, we've given the Republicans a chance. They didn't perform. We're in the midst of an economic crisis in 2008. Let's see how the other guys do. And I think Obama and the Democrats badly misread what the American people were saying. It was not a shift of the country to the left. It was a shift of people saying, we want new leadership in Washington. And
right.
I think today people are going to say, well, that new leadership didn't work out, at least in Congress. Let's try something else. So that's why I think Republicans are on the line here. This is not a free ride for them. I think voters are now going to expect them to perform, or we'll see another shift in 2 more years.
Yeah, this will be the shortest tenure of power in history. Probably they'll be out on their fannies in 2 years. So as we see what happens here, and we don't know, till everything is in and we find out where everything's going, but it looks like that the Republicans are going to pick up power. And so if that's the case, do they do themselves a disservice in the House by sticking with somebody like John Boehner, who's an old guard of the Republican Party, or do they pick somebody like Michelle Bachmann or Steve King of Iowa or somebody else to be Speaker of the House to show that these Republicans are different?
Well, I think this is going to be is going to be interesting to watch. I think the Republican leadership in the House has begun to get the picture. I think they've performed very well in difficult circumstances, I have to say, almost unanimous, I think with only one defection opposing the Obama health care bill, essentially unanimous opposing the financial regulation bill. So this is what I want to avoid more than anything else is dissatisfaction that leads Tea Party people or anybody else into a third party
right.
Effort in 2012. That is the kind of split in the center right that will just give the Democrats another lease on power. But I must say the establishment, the Republican establishment in Washington, has to show that it's learned the lesson. I think a lot of them have. And we'll just see how many people get elected today who are willing to say we really want strong opposition to these programs from the Obama administration, no compromise. We're prepared to go to the people again in 2012 and say we stood on principle, and if that's what the people really wanted, they'll reelect them. Excellent.
Ambassador John Bolton, if people want to read your work, where can they go?
Well, at the website of the American Enterprise Institute, AEI.org, has a lot of it, Wall Street Journal, and lots of other places. But AEI.org would be the first place to go.
Excellent. Appreciate you being with us again.
Well, many thanks for having me. Good luck to you.
All right.